You think you're brave enough to hear our terrifying stories? Before the darkness consumes you and the story begins, subscribe. If you dare, the inescapable nightmare. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the darkness. It enveloped me, a suffocating shroud that pressed in from all sides. Panic surged through my veins as I realized I couldn't move, couldn't see anything beyond the inky blackness that held me captive. I tried to call out, to scream for help, but my voice was nothing more than a whispered echo, lost in the void. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me entirely. Then, slowly, like a distant echo growing louder, I heard it, a soft, haunting melody. The music was faint at first, a mournful tune that seemed to beckon me closer. I strained to listen, to identify the source of the melody, but it remained just out of reach. As the melody grew stronger, I felt a sensation of movement, as if I were being pulled along by some unseen force. My body drifted through the darkness, carried by the eerie strains of the haunting music. It was a sensation of helplessness, of being carried toward an unknown destination. Finally, as the music swelled to a crescendo, I emerged from the darkness into a dimly lit room. The walls were adorned with faded wallpaper, peeling at the edges, and the air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay. I was lying on a creaky old bed, the springs groaning beneath my weight. The room was sparsely furnished, a lone wooden chair standing in the corner, but what caught my attention was the mirror that hung on the opposite wall. My reflection stared back at me, but it was not my own face that I saw. Instead, it was twisted and contorted, a grotesque mask of fear and despair. I reached out to touch the mirror, to break the nightmarish illusion, but my hand passed through the glass as if it were nothing more than a mirage. Panic surged through me once more as I realized the truth. I was trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. The haunting melody continued to play, its mournful notes echoing through the room, a siren's song that seemed to taunt me. I tried to scream, to tear myself away from the nightmare, but my voice remained silent. It was as if the nightmare itself had taken hold of my very essence, binding me to its twisted reality. Time lost all meaning in that nightmarish realm. I drifted from one terrifying scenario to another, each more horrifying than the last. I found myself in a dark forest, pursued by shadowy figures with glowing eyes. I stood on the edge of a bottomless abyss, staring into the depths of an eternal darkness. And through it all, the haunting melody played on, a constant reminder of my inescapable torment. It was a melody that seemed to seep into my very soul, filling me with a sense of dread and hopelessness. But then, in the midst of the nightmare, I heard another sound, a voice, distant but unmistakable. It was the voice of someone I loved, calling my name, reaching out to me from beyond the darkness. With every ounce of strength left in me, I fought to reach that voice, to break free from the nightmare's grip. The haunting melody grew louder, more discordant, as if it were trying to drown out the voice that called to me. I pushed against the darkness, inching closer to the sound of my loved one's voice. The nightmare fought back, its grip tightening, but I refused to give in. With one final, desperate effort, I broke free from the nightmare's clutches and emerged into the waking world. I gasped for breath, my heart pounding in my chest as I found myself lying in my own bed, bathed in the soft light of dawn. The haunting melody still echoed in my ears, but it was fading, becoming nothing more than a distant memory. I realized then that I had escaped the nightmare, that I had returned to the realm of the living. But the memory of that inescapable nightmare still lingers, a chilling reminder that darkness can take hold of us when we least expect it, trapping us in a terrifying reality from which there is no escape. The never-ending nightmare. I awoke in a cold sweat, gasping for air as if I had been held underwater for far too long. My heart raced, pounding against my rib cage like a caged beast desperate for freedom. I wiped the beads of perspiration from my forehead, trying to shake off the residual fear that clung to my every nerve. It had been the same nightmare again, the one that had haunted my sleep for weeks on end. Each night, I found myself in a decaying, abandoned mansion, a place I'd never seen in reality but knew intimately in my dreams. The mansion was a labyrinth of twisted corridors and crumbling grandeur, its walls oozing with a malevolent darkness that seemed to whisper secrets I could never quite grasp. I would roam its endless halls, my footsteps echoing eerily as I searched for a way out. But the way out never came. In the nightmare, I was never alone. Shadows danced at the corners of my vision, flitting in and out of existence like elusive phantoms. I could hear the soft, mocking laughter of children, their voices echoing in the distance, though I never saw their faces. As I ventured deeper into the mansion's heart, the air grew thick with a sense of foreboding and the walls seemed to close in on me. Doors slammed shut behind me, trapping me in a web of despair. The nightmare always led me to a room, an opulent chamber with high ceilings adorned with chandeliers, their once gleaming crystals now dulled by time. In the center of the room stood an ornate mirror, its glass warped and cracked. I couldn't resist the urge to approach the mirror, drawn by the feeling that some unspeakable truth lay hidden within its fractured surface. As I gazed into the glass, my own reflection began to distort, twisting and contorting until it was no longer my own face that stared back at me. In the mirror's depths, I saw a grotesque, nightmarish version of myself, a creature with hollow eyes and a twisted smile that seemed to stretch on forever. It beckoned to me, urging me to step through the mirror, promising answers to the questions that had plagued my waking hours. Each time I would step closer, the mirror's pull irresistible, until I stood on the threshold of its glassy surface. But as I reached out to cross over, my reflection would shatter, and I would wake with a start drenched in cold sweat. The nightmare repeated night after night, and with each iteration the mansion's malevolence seemed to intensify. I could feel the darkness closing in on me, its suffocating grip becoming harder to escape. One evening, as I stood before the mirror, the grotesque reflection beckoning me closer, I made a choice. I would confront the nightmare head-on, push through the mirror's surface, and discover the truth that lay hidden within. With a deep breath, I stepped forward, plunging through the mirror's cracked glass. The sensation was unlike anything I had ever experienced, a dizzying vortex of colors and shapes that seemed to warp and distort reality itself. When I emerged on the other side, I found myself in a realm that defied description. It was a place of nightmarish beauty, a twisted reflection of reality where the laws of physics held no sway. The mansion loomed before me, its decaying facade more menacing than ever. But there was something different about this version of the nightmare. The shadows that had haunted me now had form and substance, and the ghostly children who had once mocked me now stood before me, their eyes filled with malevolence. They circled me, their laughter a cacophony of madness, as I tried to find an escape. But the mansion's halls had become a shifting maze, an ever-changing labyrinth that defied logic. As I stumbled through the nightmare's twisted corridors, the darkness closing in on me, I felt a sense of hopelessness that threatened to consume me entirely. I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, a place where time held no meaning and escape was an impossibility. Then, just as despair threatened to claim me, I heard a voice that was both familiar and distant, calling my name from beyond the nightmare's grasp. With every ounce of strength left in me, I followed the sound of that voice, pushing through the darkness and the madness that surrounded me. As I drew closer to the source of the voice, the nightmare began to unravel, its malevolent grip loosening. Finally, I emerged from the nightmare's clutches, gasping for air as I found myself back in my own bed, bathed in the gentle light of dawn. The nightmare had released its hold on me, but its memory lingered like a lingering shadow. I knew that the nightmare would return, that its malevolence was not so easily defeated, but I also knew that I had the strength to confront it, to push through the darkness and find my way back to the waking world. As I lay there, the remnants of the nightmare still haunting my thoughts, I felt a newfound determination. I would face the nightmare again and again until... The dream catcher. The nightmare had become a nightly ritual, a torment that I couldn't escape. It began with me standing alone in a vast, shadowy forest, the trees towering overhead like ancient sentinels. Their branches seemed to reach out for me, twisting and torting into grotesque shapes that filled me with dread. I tried to scream, to call for help, but my voice was nothing more than a whisper carried away by the chilling wind. Panic surged through my veins as I realized that I was not alone in the forest. There were others lurking in the shadows, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. As I ventured deeper into the nightmare, I encountered strange, nightmarish creatures, twisted, grotesque beings with elongated limbs and featureless faces. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their movements unnatural and unsettling. These creatures would whisper to me, their voices a discordant symphony of despair and torment. They would speak of unspeakable horrors, of a darkness that threatened to consume the world. And no matter how hard I tried to escape, they would always find me, their whispers growing louder and more insistent. Night after night, I was trapped in this never-ending nightmare, a prisoner of my own mind. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, only to fall asleep and return to the same twisted reality. I became obsessed with finding a way out of the nightmare, spending my days researching dreams and nightmares, seeking answers that always seemed to elude me. I even consulted with sleep specialists and therapists, desperate to uncover the truth behind the relentless torment. But the nightmare only grew worse. The creatures in the forest became more aggressive, their whispers more haunting. I would wake up with scratches and bruises on my body, as if the nightmare was encroaching on my waking life. One night, as I stood in the forest, the trees began to close in on me, their branches twisting and entwining to form a cage. I felt a suffocating pressure on my chest, as if the nightmare itself was trying to crush the life out of me. I struggled to breathe, to break free from the nightmare's grip, but it was no use. The darkness closed in around me, and I felt myself being pulled deeper into the nightmare, as if it were swallowing me whole. Then, as I teetered on the brink of despair, I saw a glimmer of light in the distance, a small, flickering flame that danced in the darkness. With every ounce of strength left in me, I stumbled toward the light, desperate for salvation. As I drew closer, I realized that the flame was not just any light, it was a dream catcher, hanging from a gnarled tree branch. Its intricate web of threads seemed to pulse with a faint, ethereal glow, and it cast a protective barrier around me. The nightmare creatures hissed and recoiled from the dreamcatcher's light, their whispers turning into anguished cries. The trees that had imprisoned me began to wither and crumble, their branches snapping and falling away. With a final burst of strength, I reached out and touched the dreamcatcher. Its threads seared with a blinding light, and the nightmare shattered like glass, leaving me standing in a realm of pure white light. I woke up, my heart pounding in my chest, but this time it was not from fear. It was a feeling of liberation, of having conquered the darkness that had plagued me for so long. The nightmare had finally released its hold on me, and I knew that I had found a way to confront my deepest fears and emerge stronger for it. To this day, the memory of that relentless nightmare still haunts my dreams, a chilling reminder of the horrors that can lurk within our own minds. But it also serves as a testament to the power of resilience and the strength that can be found in the most terrifying of circumstances. The echoing nightmares. The first time it happened, I dismissed it as a one-off occurrence, a mere glitch in the tapestry of my dreams. But as the nights wore on, the nightmare returned, each time more vivid, more relentless, until it became an inescapable horror that consumed my nights. In the dream, I found myself standing at the edge of a desolate cliff, overlooking a bottomless abyss. The sky was a swirling maelstrom of crimson and onyx, the stars above casting an eerie, blood-red glow. A bitter wind tore at my skin, carrying with it the whispers of forgotten souls. As I gazed into the abyss, a nameless dread washed over me. I knew that I had to jump, that I had no choice but to plunge into the depths below. My heart raced, my limbs trembled, but the dream offered no alternatives. It was as if the nightmare itself had me in its merciless grip. With a deep breath, I stepped off the cliff, surrendering myself to the inevitable fall. The sensation of plummeting through the endless void was excruciating, the terror unbearable. But the nightmare had only just begun. As I descended deeper into the abyss, I became aware of something lurking in the darkness, a presence ancient and malevolent. It whispered to me, its voice a chilling blend of despair and madness. It spoke of unspeakable horrors, of a world beyond the realm of the living. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they were a cacophony of torment that threatened to shatter my sanity. I screamed, clawing at the empty air, but there was no escape. The darkness pressed in from all sides, suffocating me, swallowing me whole. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest, but the relief was short-lived. Each night, I would fall asleep and return to the same twisted reality, trapped in the nightmare's merciless cycle. Desperate for answers, I sought the help of sleep specialists and therapists, but they could offer no solace. They suggested that the nightmare might be a manifestation of my own fears and anxieties, but I knew that it was something more sinister, something beyond my control. I became obsessed with the nightmare, spending my days researching dreams and the supernatural, seeking answers that always seemed to elude me. I even considered turning to the occult, desperate for any means to break free from the relentless torment. One night, as I stood on the precipice of the abyss once more, I made a choice to defy the nightmare, to resist its malevolent pull. I clenched my teeth and fought back the fear, refusing to surrender to the darkness. As I plummeted into the abyss, I focused all of my willpower on a single thought: escape. I visualized a world beyond the nightmare, a world bathed in light and warmth. I willed myself to break free from the nightmare's grasp, to shatter the chains that bound me. To my astonishment, it worked. As I descended into the depths, the whispers of despair began to fade, replaced by a glimmer of hope. The darkness that had imprisoned me began to dissipate, and I felt myself being pulled toward the light. With a final burst of strength, I broke through the surface of the nightmare, emerging into a realm of pure, blinding light. I woke up, my body drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. But this time, it was not from fear. It was a feeling of triumph, of having conquered the nightmare that had plagued me for so long. The nightmare never returned after that fateful night, and I knew that I had found a way to confront my deepest fears and emerge stronger for it. But the memory of those echoing nightmares still haunts my dreams, a chilling reminder that the horrors we face in our sleep can be as real and as terrifying as anything we encounter in the waking world.